Welcome to our new podcast, Building Astropad. I'm Matt Runge, co-founder and CEO at Astropad, and I'll be taking you behind the scenes at our company, where we build software and hardware products for creative people. So if you're a creator, interested in bootstrapping a business, or starting your next big project, join us in learning together. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. I'm here with Rachel Dugan of the Astropad team. Hi, Rachel. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rachel. I go by Dukes, and I am an illustrator, a freelance illustrator. So I moonlight evenings and weekends drawing for different things.
Yeah, and also part of the marketing team here at
Yes.
Astropad.
Yes.
And yeah, two Rachels on the team. So you go by Dukes. We know you as Dukes.
Yes.
So you moonlight as a freelancer. So today we're going to talk about your freelance career as an illustrator and what it's been like in 2020, because things have been pretty different. But first, I'd love to hear more about, your illustration and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I went to art school in Chicago at Columbia College, and I studied art and design. And then basically right as I was finishing, I knew I loved illustration. And since then, it's been about 10 years, I've been freelancing as an illustrator. So my drawing style is very simple, mostly black and white line drawings. I dabble in color, but I love drawing observations, current events, celebrities, portraits, animals, like kind of a little bit of everything. But I like my work to be very accessible and maybe make people laugh or smile when they see it.
And how long have you been doing that? How long have you been working as a freelancer?
Over 10 years now. Yeah, it's been a good chunk of time.
And how'd you get started doing that?
Well, I just kind of realized that I've always been a doodler, and I thought, how can I make money doing this? And so I just started pretending that I knew what I was doing and created drawings. And if people responded well to it online, I would offer to sell it or draw people for like custom portraits. And then I started doing selling events and printing things on merch. And yeah, it just kind of spiraled. And now I'm able to offer all sorts of things, from like drawing workshops to live drawing events, selling merch, and doing like editorial illustrations or custom illustrations.
So it sounds like you got started through the internet. Is that right? That like originally people found your work through the internet and you sold it through the internet?
Absolutely. Yeah. Without social media, I can't imagine.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So it all started on social media.
Yes. Because coming out of school, it was so important to have a website, obviously, like your portfolio. But that wasn't nearly as important in my journey as having social media. And it was kind of just like throw something out there and see if it sticks. And with social media, that's where really my primary audience is, and specifically Instagram. And that is, it's just like the lifeblood of my business.
So that's pretty interesting. I think it's interesting too for people getting started as well. How did you start early on? Like, say you're getting on, if you take us back to when you started on Instagram and you started sharing your drawings, how did that get going? Like, how did you like bootstrap that process? Like, did you already have some existing followers that helped, or like what somebody starting new in the field that really doesn't have a lot of followers on Instagram and wants to do something similar? What would you suggest?
Yeah, most of the people that followed me were just friends and people I knew from college who happened to also be creative people. And then 10 plus years ago, Instagram was not what it is today. It was very like basic. I don't know. You didn't post a whole lot. Right. People weren't like using it as a platform for their business as much as today.
Yeah, it wasn't commercial yet, really. It was more just like people's everyday photographs.
Yeah, and filters, like that sort of but yeah, I would suggest, I think that people should really, if they're like, I should probably get on social to start getting eyes on my work, I would say pick what works. Like sometimes everybody's like, I got to make a profile for every last platform. and then they lose track of being consistent. And I think when you're on social media and you're trying to be an artist or a business or a brand, consistency is key because you want to stay relevant in people's feed. And for me, Instagram is perfect because it's visual. There's like shopping features and easy contact. Like you can DM, email, comment, you can link in there. And I think the hardest part, at least for like a creative person, is the critique. Like nobody likes being critiqued.
Oh, sure.
And so a lot of people that I've known throughout the years who aren't really active on social media, but they are artists, they just don't like the idea of putting something out there because they're nervous of the response. And I can say that not everything I post has a positive response or has like, sometimes what I love, I post and people don't like it. And then something that I think is kind of like a whatever afterthought drawing ends up being super popular. And it just kind of helps you gauge what parts of your work are actually important to showcase and what could be products, what things maybe are just personal work. It helps you like suss out your own portfolio and where to
Right,
go.
right. No, and that applies to so much stuff too. I mean, even, my background's mostly in like software, like programming, building software. And even there too, there's the same tendency where you don't want to ship something. You don't want to ship, you work so hard on, I've done side projects in the past, my own little utilities and things I've built,
Yeah.
and you're afraid to put it out there because you're like, oh, somebody's going to find a bug or somebody's going to think it's not very good or it's not useful or it's, there's always objections. And as you said, the only way to fight that is to do it, is to put it out there and
Mm-hmm.
build a habit of putting stuff out there because it gets easier every single time.
For sure. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting too, that like you were saying that Instagram is your main channel. And like, I'll note, like, you're not on Twitter, right? Like you're
No.
not. I remember I was asking, well, oh, what's your Twitter? And you're like, I'm not on Twitter.
Yeah.
But so Instagram, are there social media channels you use, or do you really just focus on Instagram?
I also post on Facebook, but I'm not as active, I would say, on Facebook. Facebook is kind of just like the parallel to Instagram. And there are some people who happen to be on Facebook that are customers of mine, but they aren't on Instagram. So yeah, I've just kind of kept it to those. And those are the main channels where people will ask how to buy things or will invite me to do markets or in-person events or ask random questions like, do you do weddings? Would you do live drawing at a wedding? And then all of a sudden it
Great.
turns into a job. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. Yeah, and that's interesting advice too, to like, yeah, just focus on like one social media channel. Just like go for Instagram or go for, whatever it is, that TikTok or, like if you want
Yeah.
to
If
do
you can
videos
figure
or,
that out.
yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube, focus on like building on one before you go to the other. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I was curious too, what does it look like when your customers reach out to you? Because it sounds like they find you through Instagram. What does that look like? Do they DM you, or what? How does the process work? Because I know that's one complaint about Instagram, is it's harder to like have a link to go somewhere. It's harder to, you know, kind of act when you see a post.
Yeah. People contact me in every possible way. I've even been texted before by someone who was a friend of a friend who gave a phone number and was like,
Okay, I
"Can
was gonna say,
I?"
how'd you get your number? Okay, friend of a
Yeah.
friend.
But I would say that the primary way people contact me like would be through my website, finding my email, sending me an email, or DMing on Facebook or Instagram, or commenting, asking like things. And it can be kind of exhausting because I'm one person. I don't have anybody else helping
Right.
me
Yeah, you
with
don't have a
this.
yeah,
I don't
agent
have a
or
team.
yeah.
No. And I take response times really seriously because I want to be accessible. And so I'm like constantly checking my DMs. Like if somebody leaves a comment, I just want to like make sure that that experience is positive and that people feel like if they ask something of me, I'm on it. But yeah, I would say people reach out in so many different ways, and just being flexible with how they feel comfortable with doing that.
And you've built up like a serious following on Instagram too. It's really impressive. Like I believe it's over 10,000 people you have following you on
Yeah, yeah.
Instagram. I mean, what do you would attribute a lot of that to? Like, what would you tell somebody else who wants to build a following like that? Another illustrator that wants to build a major following on Instagram. What's worked for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that it's been a slow process. It hasn't been an instant, oh, I just did this one thing right and it skyrocketed. I wish I
Yeah.
could say that, because that,
No silver bullet, right? Yeah. A lot of hard
no,
work.
it's been a lot of slow growth and trying new things and being willing to try things that you aren't certain will work and see where they go. I think the consistency, I've had a lot of people tell me, like, every morning when I get up, my morning routine, like, you post something, and it's just like interesting to hear that perspective,
Mhm.
because for me, I like to do that because I have a full-time job. So I have a tight schedule of, I get up early, I try to take care of some illustration stuff, I post on social, and then I transition to my job at Astropad. So,
Mhm.
but then hearing what people say and adapting to that. So then I'm like, okay, then I'm onto something. I like that. Or paying attention to the pattern in which you post and trying not to be so similar every single time, but also not, I don't know, some people are like so intense about the grid and what does the grid look like,
Oh, sure.
and highly stylized, and it's like sometimes you might have a awesome thought and you just go for it in the moment, and that's okay too. Like, you can't plan for every moment or every good idea. So I think just doing it. I know I don't like, I know some people who have like extreme huge followings, like over 100,000 or even 1 million, and it's so like, wow, we're so impressed by this follower count, but it's really just a lot of work and patience and hoping for the best and just trying until things start kind of ticking up.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're talking about the grid, are you referring to like when you go into a profile and you look at somebody's overall posts? Like, some
Yeah,
people try to get that,
just be so perfect. Like,
yeah,
everything's so
match perfectly.
perfect.
Yeah.
And, I think that even like from so many of the things I've learned being on the marketing team at Astropad, there's something to be said about not always being completely polished, about, what other people are doing, like when we share user generated content, and that you can't always plan for that. And people like to see reality. It's not always like the most polished thing ever. So trying to incorporate some of that, even in my illustration stuff where I'm always hiding behind my illustrations, I've tried to be more like, oh, this is my drawing room, this is my office, like, this is how I do things, like that. Before, I would be like, no, nobody wants to see that, it's not glamorous, I don't have a cool crazy drawing studio. But then it just like connects you more, and being willing to, like, yeah, try.
Absolutely. Yeah. The people want to see the kind of behind the scenes, how the sausage is made, what's going
Yeah.
on, right? I mean, that's part of the reason we're even doing this podcast, is
Yeah.
just to talk with people on the team and talk what's going behind the scenes, and yeah, sure, share more kind of raw details of what's happening, and not having to be so perfect and polished all the time. Just
Hmm.
get something out there. It makes it more human in a way too. You can connect with it more.
Totally human and accessible. I think just having that line, whether it's like communication or storytelling, the human factor, it's just really nice, especially now too, because we're all social distance
Yeah.
and trying to like connect with one another. Like, social media is a very powerful tool, but there's also other ways to do it.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, we should get back to also talking about, and I wanted to ask a bunch about social media, because you've done such a great job with that, and I think it makes sense for a lot of other illustrators too to hear what you've done with social media. But we should talk too about what it's been like in 2020 with the pandemic and COVID, and kind of what does that look like for your illustration, your freelance illustration business? Like, what's kind of the before and after?
It's been a roller coaster. I was really gearing up for a super busy year. I would say last year was my busiest year ever with illustration in terms of the number of events I did, the amount of business I did. Just, it was just kind of like, ooh, this like shit, like things are
it's taken off. Yeah.
taken off. And it was really
That's great.
exciting. And so a lot of planning goes into your following year, because when events are happening or music festivals or things that you will be participating in, you have to kind of go into that. But so I would say that when 2020 started, right after the holidays is a slow period for me because people typically don't shop a ton in January. February is a little bit more because Valentine's Day, and I teach a Valentine's Day workshop. So I did that, and I did like some live drawing in February, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm just getting back in the groove for spring and into summer. And then that weekend in March, that like middle of March, and I had been seeing the news and what was going on. And I think I should speak for myself. I was very naive. I thought, well, this seems pretty bad. And like something's going to happen, but nothing ever really happens quite like that here.
Right.
So I was cautiously optimistic. And then it happened. It just kind of like this numbness and this standstill where I think everybody, like freelancers, artists or not, were just like, what is actually happening and the gravity of the situation. And I mean, I should really also, like, I'm super privileged. I have a full-time job with Astropad. So I'm a freelance artist, and that's just like the cherry on top. So I speak from that perspective, but I have so many friends and peers who own their own business, freelance, and talking with them, and they're like, I mean, and I share this, but this like absolute halt in business, going from
that's terrifying.
Regular overnight to a standstill, and then wondering what can we do? Like, what's going to happen? And because it's so unknown how this will all roll out, and that we're just in basically the beginning few stages. Like, we've got a long way to go based on what people are saying. So pacing yourself, like trying to like be present in now, but also be planning, because if you don't have something to fall back on, then you are in a very scary situation.
Absolutely.
And, outside of this too, a lot of people who had jobs don't. So that means that they're probably not buying cool artwork, cool posters or ceramics and all these things.
Yeah, no, that's terrifying to have it just shut off overnight like that. And then in the beginning too, I think, none of us could foresee really how long this was going to last. It was like, oh, is this going to be a couple weeks and then we're out of this?
Yeah.
It took a while for it to settle in that, okay, this is going to be a thing for quite some time into 2021, which was unsettling and took a while to come to terms with. For a lot of your friends in the freelance business, what are you hearing now from them? Has business picked up at all? Has it changed, or are they still kind of in the similar situation to March?
It really depends on who I talk to. I would say that there are some positives, that I do know some people who they were frozen for a bit. There was nothing going on, but then they kind of figured out, like, a lot of people are starting to create artwork that talks to the experience of right now, like what we're all going through.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And people are like, wow, like, this speaks to me. I really want this artwork, because it's like we're all going through this and we're all trying to figure it out. And then other people who, maybe worked for bigger clients and didn't create as much original artwork, but made it for large scale corporations, like, that work has in many ways evaporated, because these huge companies, maybe some are doing bad, or even like sports team, that sort of stuff is halted.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Events have halted. But a lot of the artists I know, a lot of times, like, the money that they're making, it's like in the budgets of these companies, like, that's like fun budget. The fun, like, oh, what if we do this really unique marketing thing with this artist, and they make this custom thing and we share it or something. And now it's like that
First to
That's
be cut. Yeah. Yeah. If it's
first to be
the
cut.
fun part. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, I think it's a mix, but I don't think I've talked to anybody who's like business as usual.
And what have you found that's worked? Like, in what ways have you had to pivot?
So, in one way, I think that I've always priced my work very affordable. I've always created affordable artwork. And in this moment, affordability and accessibility is really important because a lot of people are worried about their financials and they don't have a ton of money. So, in that regard, I'm like, whew, because I've seen some people lower their prices because they're just like, nobody's going to buy a $50 candle like right
Mhm.
now. So, there's that. I also had a really strong period where I was creating care packages for people. So I make these things called mystery fun packs, and I've been doing them for years. And it's basically just I have boxes of drawings, like loose leaf paper drawings,
Yeah.
and I cut up, like 10 drawings. I go through the box and I put them in an envelope and ship them off to somebody. And
Oh,
you can
that's pretty cool.
you can
That's
include
great.
a special note. And so all of a sudden people were like, I want to send snail mail to my friend. And it was so lovely. I was like writing these custom notes to people, and I felt like they're just like, I hope this makes you happy, even if it's just for a day. Or this is like really personal, nice things. And people felt that I could help them connect with their friend who lives maybe in another state or whatever, who's going through a hard time. And so for a while, that's all I was doing. I was just sending mystery fun packs. And those typically are just popular around Christmas time because it's like a fun, random gift that nobody expects. And so to have that be a popular item, like that was really unexpected. And I was like, okay, I'm gearing up. I'm going to have to get ready for all these orders. And that was really, really fun.
No, that's great, and that makes a ton of sense too with, everybody's locked down, and especially if you have family and friends and other areas you can't even go see them, that
Yeah.
they'd wanna send them something. No, that makes total sense, like pivoting to what makes sense for the moment, and I've seen you do a ton of illustrations too of people wearing masks,
Yes.
which is great. I've seen a bunch of those on Instagram, which
Yes. Yeah, I guess I feel, and I wrote about this a bit too, is that there's a lot going on right now in the world. And if you feel compelled to help better something, or if there's a cause you believe in, or if you want to, I feel like I have some level of responsibility to say things because I do have a lot of followers, and I want to make sure that I'm able to be like, wearing a mask is cool and we should all be wearing masks, especially if
Mhm.
we're around people or if we're going grocery shopping. It's just the right thing to do. And I've had some pushback, but overall, I think I try to like repurpose old drawings. So I just go through old drawings and then I add a mask.
That's really smart.
And then I just maybe have like a new caption or I write a new note on it to make it like maybe a little funny or feel shareable. And yeah, like keeping it on current events. And it's just how I feel.
Yeah, and I like too how you're reusing old drawings, because it sounds like for the mask pictures you've been doing and for the mystery fun packs too, you were
Mm-hmm.
taking like old that's great, where you take these little drawings you've done and find a new use for them.
Yeah, yeah, because otherwise, they'd just be collecting dust. And some people, depending on your style, so if it takes you 20 hours to create a drawing, it takes me a matter of minutes to create a doodle. So I don't have this strong emotional attachment to them or feeling like they have to be hundreds of dollars. So it's fun. I just like cut them up and then yeah, with like repurposing drawings, I'm like, oh, people liked this, a year ago. I should just redraw it and add something new and it feels fresh. So
So what else for your freelance business has been the mystery fun packs? Is there other stuff that's been working really well for you? Kind of during these crazy times?
yeah, I would say custom portraits. So I do like custom people, couple, family portraits. I also do custom pet portraits. I do custom butt portraits, which are very
Yeah.
unexpected. I think people like
we should probably talk about that a little bit too, because you're known for the butt portraits. Like,
It's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, how did that come to be? What's the story there?
I get asked that a lot. And I think growing up, just doodling, and my dad always had like sketchbooks where he would draw like naked ladies and stuff. And like
Yeah.
growing up being like, I want to draw. And like, I didn't draw that as a kid, but I think I always found it funny. And I have like a pretty lowbrow sense of humor. So a butt is kind of like funny to me. And I also think body positivity is really important, and it makes me so happy. Like booty drawings, like first started in person. So I would have a table at an event and I would be like, do you want me to draw your butt? I'll draw your butt. And you turn around and obviously it's like consensual. They want to. And then
Right.
I do it within a matter of like 2 minutes, and then they get the original drawing. I do couple butts, people and their dogs' butts, like cat butts, any combo of butts. And the excitement that people had, it just, when people would turn around and I'd show it to them, just they would be glowing because they're like, that's what I look like. And it made me feel so good that I was like offering this new perspective. And all I do is make line drawings. I'm like legit just looking at, what's the shape, what kind of pattern are the pants that they're wearing, where are the creases, where are like just really, really basic stuff. But then that morphed into online. Obviously now I'm not doing events, but I also just started doing it online. So people send me pictures and, I get many different types of photos, and then I draw it. And,
Oh man, I never thought about that, but yeah, that that might be the one downside.
luckily it's always like people ask, like people are really
Okay.
like people ask. So there's never been like a weird, like, no, this isn't.
Yeah, no big surprises. Like, oh man,
Yeah.
I didn't want to see that this morning.
Yes, exactly. But all that to say, I've noticed people like have had to cancel their weddings, people who were going to graduate couldn't, people who are missing their loved ones. Like I've had those people reach out and share photos and say, this person just graduated and they can't do any, like, can you draw a portrait of them? Or this wedding got pushed back, so we're doing like a Zoom fake wedding party and I want to like reveal the drawing to them during it. Like really cool, nice things. And and even butt drawings, like people will like, they're just like,
no, of course. Yeah.
Just something fun and unexpected, something that makes you maybe forget a little bit of how heavy things can be and have a moment of joy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And like helping people process what's going on. Cause I always find a lot of your drawings too to be like really humorous. So, I mean, the butt drawings, I mean,
Thanks. Yeah.
that's hilarious. So yeah, it sounds like you've, found ways to adapt with what's going on. And not only that, but help people process what's going on through the art you're making. What would you recommend what would be your advice to other freelance illustrators out there? What are some things that they can do during this pandemic for their business?
I think coming out of like a go, always busy, always focusing on the next thing, we all have like kind of administrative tasks that maybe we put off, and they're not super sexy to talk about, but now's a really good time to do it. So for example, like updating your website, like I do have a website. I've just kept it. It's there. It's a portfolio. It's another way to contact me or find out more about my clients and examples of my work. And because I draw a lot, oftentimes when I do update it like once a year, it's like, oh man, I've drawn so much this year. I should add some new stuff because it reflects like who I am today and how I draw. And so I think now is a really great time to take inventory on your online presence. And maybe you don't even have a website. Maybe now is a good time to like start imagining what your website could look like. Or if you do have one, update it. Make sure it's easy to navigate and that they can find your information. Or if you don't have like a client list, add a client list, because then it helps legitimize you and your profession. Also, I'm a huge believer in pitching yourself. I do have work that comes in organically, but like in terms of editorial illustration, so much of it has been me reaching out to them and asking for work. So it's not fun because you usually hear nothing back or you might get a no, but sometimes you get a yes. And I also want to say right now is probably not, you're not going to get a lot of yeses because companies aren't doing super hot, but now is a good time to maybe craft that pitch. And what would that pitch look like? Or do some research into if you would like to work for a certain company or you'd like to work for a magazine or publication or do freelance for something, maybe do that research and start cataloging it. Like make a Google sheet, and we have a template in the blog post where you can basically like create a list of who have you contacted, when did you contact, what was the answer, what was the response, did anyone like get back to you, what date was that, like little things that help you, because later on when things pick back up, whenever that may be, you'll have something to go off of. And along with that too, tracking expenses. Like right now, people are probably not spending a ton, but you could look back and say, I've been trying to be a freelancer. I've been freelancing for this long. How much have I spent on supplies? Like, am I being wasteful? Am I being smart? Are there areas where I don't need to? So I do think that now is a good time to dip into some of those more mundane tasks that are really easy to push off to the side because normally we're just busy.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Getting yourself organized and tracking the expenses and working on the pitches. And going back to the pitches, what does it look like typically when you pitch somebody you'd like to do an editorial illustration for? What's a typical pitch you'd give?
I mean, it's an email, it's quick, it's got examples. Like I usually include 1 or 2 examples of my drawing. I clearly highlight how you can view more of my work. And then in the pitch, which we have a template of the one I use in the blog post as well, but I like to reference like some of my top or favorite clients to work for. So that way, if somebody even happens to open it and they see that, they're like, oh, I like that. Or like, this could be someone we work with in the future. I just keep it super simple. And I think if you are doing research and somebody like a publication or whatever company has submission guidelines, you should follow those. Don't go rogue, because most often people are turned off by that because they get a high volume of people asking for work. But if you just see an email, then send them a pitch. Tell them what you want to do and say it really easy and quick and simple, and then share your work so they can actually get a sense of what you're all about.
And for somebody that's never done this before, there's going to be a lot of rejection. You're not going to hear back from people. How should you calibrate your expectations? Like, what do you think is a reasonable response rate to expect to kind of set yourself up for going into this?
Geez, it's really hard to say, especially right now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The world is crazy right now.
Yeah.
How about even, since that's a really hard question to answer, how about even if we go pre-COVID, like what would you say is a reasonable response rate?
My normal schedule in normal times would be January is when I do like that administrative stuff, which I should be doing it way more. And it's, now I'm like, oh, I do have time to do it. But I send maybe like 20 pitch emails out in January, usually say like, Happy New Year. I loved working with you. Like people I've worked with before or new people.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep the
And
relationship alive. Makes a lot of sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then just reference that I'd love to work with them again in the future. And usually I hear back from maybe 5 of the 20.
Okay. That's a pretty high hit rate. I was expecting. Yeah.
It's hard to say, but like some people that I've worked with over the years, they're going to reply more readily because we have a longer relationship and it's taken a long time. Like there have been times where I send out 20 pitch emails and I don't hear anything back, and it hurts, but you just got to keep it in perspective. It's nothing personal. It could be for so many reasons. And the only way I've gotten to a point where 5 people write back to me is that I've just continued doing it and prepared myself for the rejection. I think rejection is just a part of the process that you have to accept. And if you're able to do that and just push forward, at some point, somebody's going to want to work with you.
Yeah, yeah, just keep on keeping on. Yeah, no, that mirrors too, like what we do at Astropad when we do press emails as well, where, yeah, now if we could send out 20, we could probably get 5 responses as well, but that's also because we've spent years going back and forth with some of these journalists.
Yeah.
Early on, our success rate was a lot lower than that. I remember, yeah, you'd send out 50 and you'd get like 2 responses, or maybe
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
more than that. So it's interesting, the same stuff applies there with, yeah, building the relationships with the freelance business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you've also got a blog post that you put together that covers a lot of this stuff. We'll include it in the show notes here. Got a lot of examples. You've got an example pitch in here, tracking how to track clients, how to track expenses. So a lot of really, really helpful stuff here that we link to for anybody that wants to check it out. Otherwise, if somebody was interested in checking out your illustrations or learning more about your freelance business, how would they find you?
They could find me on Instagram. I'm at Rad Illustrates, and I'm also just rachaldugan.com. But obviously, like I said earlier, I'm on Instagram, and if you want to say hi or ask a question, I always keep my DMs open.
All right. Yeah, no, that's great. We'll link to your Instagram as well. Well, thanks a lot, Dukes.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun to have the worlds cross over.
Yeah, absolutely.